Let me introduce the Honorable Young-Wan Kim, Consul General of the Republic of Korea in LA. We're going to listen to his opening remarks.
I'm gonna give a few words before this meaningful joint seminar starts. Good morning and welcome everyone. Thank you all of you for coming to the joint seminar of Anti-Asian Hate Incident. Let me express my gratitude to Deputy Chief Commanding Officer Blake Cho, as well as other LAPD officials, including Aaron and James and Danny, who brings an idea to us. And I also thank you, readers of various Koreatown community organizations who are actively engaged in preventing and responding to anti-Asian hate incidents and crimes. Since the beginning of COVID-19 pandemic, we have witnessed a significant increase in anti-Asian hate incidents. Just last month, the Office of the Attorney General of California published a report that shows hate crimes against Asians has increased from 89 incidents in 2020 to 247 incidents in 2021, which is an increase of 177%. What's more alarming is that many of these hate crimes reported through newspapers and TV channels occurred in the public space. It means that our community has become more intolerant and aggressive against differences and the vulnerables. And anyone of Asian descent can be a victim, or that any of us can witness such a tragedy. I know that various Koreatown community groups are implementing programs on their own with federal and local government grants to support the victims of these incidents and crimes. And I would like to give them my personal and consolate full support for their efforts and commend their dedication to operating these voluntary campaigns and organizing government-community partnership. In addition, I also understand LAPD is steadily and actively engaging with the Asian community with a victim-centered approach and cooperative state of mind. In this regard, I hope this meeting will serve as a good opportunity to strengthen partnership and our ability to respond to these hate crimes. As with any challenges, the greater the awareness of the issue, the better prepared we are to confront and solve it. On a final note, during my time in New York City, I saw posters all over the walls that read, "See something, say something." I believe that phrase is also as applicable here in Los Angeles as it is in New York. Do not hesitate. Speak out. Stand together. And we can put an end to this hate. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to participate, especially my commands here and the officers that are here from LAPD. You know, I just wanted to be very quick and kind of support what the Consul General had said. We are in a situation right now where society is desensitized to hate crimes. There has been a tolerance for hate crimes, and we are in a society right now where the division in society is probably the largest that we've seen it in a while. And there's many reasons for this, but as you remember, at the advent of COVID, we saw a lot of anti-Asian hate that was directed towards AAPI community by people that were blaming them for bringing COVID over to our shores. And we saw a lot of high visibility things that happened in New York and San Francisco, which kind of spread throughout the country, and ultimately that ended up here. Now our hate crime statistics for 2020 versus 2021 were significantly up. Hate crimes, anti-Asian hate crimes, anti-Asian hate incidents were up between those 2 years. Part of it is because we went on a campaign for people to report, but the other thing is the incidents were also increasing. But I will tell you, in looking at the raw numbers, we're really underreported here in probably the United States. People are not reporting hate crimes and hate incidents, not just AAPI, but across the board. Because if you look at a city of 4 million people, and you look and you record 28 hate crime or hate incidents and 14 hate crimes, you know that's really underreported. So we have a lot of work to do. I think it's really important that when you walk away from here and you're communicating with people that are in the media, that the LAPD, and Detective Orlando Martinez is our expert here as far as our hate crime coordinator. People need to report if they see something, they have to say something. And that means they have to call 911 so we can get a police officer out there if they see a hate crime, and we need information about what they're seeing, what the suspect looks like. We need to make sure the victim's there, and we need to record it. But we also have to record hate incidents, and those are incidents where maybe a crime has not occurred and sometimes can be protected by First Amendment. That would be somebody that is, and on a street corner yelling racial epithets or saying something that is not actually a crime. Well, we also need to report those, because oftentimes hate incidents lead to hate crimes, and when we have a hate crime, we want to be able to prosecute a hate crime and get the enhancements through the DA's office, and sometimes we'll go back and look at hate incidents. But I think just in general, we have to do 3 things as a society. Number one, I think it's really important that we take a stand as a society and say enough is enough. Not just for AAPI, but all hate crimes and hate incidents. And until society gets to that point, we're going to keep seeing these incidents. Number 2, we have to educate our community members about how to report and why to report, which is really important. That's going to be an ongoing thing that will probably have to continue until all of us sitting at these tables are long retired. And then number 3 is the prosecution. We have to be able to build solid cases against individuals that are committing hate crimes and develop the hate motive for that, so that we can prosecute people and we can take that and get the sentencing enhancements. So I believe, thank you, sir, for the opportunity to be a part of this, because this is one of many venues I think that we have to continually keep pushing out so that we can actually have an impact on AAPI hate crime. Thank you.
I'd like to touch on something Mr. Kim said. And what I see in this room is, and what we've been building in the Los Angeles Police Department, is partnerships. And this is how we can keep our community and work towards keeping our community safe and bringing these important issues to the forefront so we can investigate them, and then, as Chief Chow said, bring them forward for successful prosecution. So the partnerships, and I see it represented in this room, are the public. We have the public here. Also the media. I've met with many of you and had to open dialogues with you, reporting on various incidents. Our community stakeholders, I see many of you here. Our government entities, and this is an example here in this room, are other government entities working together with the local police to keep our communities safe. Our community organizations, and then of course the police. And together, working together, is how we keep our community safe. So I thank you very much for the reception I've received since arriving here in Olympic Division, working with each of you, seeing you at many community events, the calls, the emails. Keep that coming, because we all need to work together to help keep our communities safe. Thank you very much.
So this is going to be a really standard discussion on what a hate crime is. One of the things that I want you to realize is, I'm just going to take the Los Angeles area for instance. We've all heard the term hate crime and hate incident, because that's part of what we advocate for. In Los Angeles area, in LA County, there's 47 different law enforcement agencies. Out of those 47, less than 10 complete a hate incident report. Across the nation, most do not even know what the term hate incident is. So in Los Angeles, we're ahead of the curve in trying to track and be proactive instead of reactive by taking these hate incident reports and prevent the next hate crime victim. But as I said, in Los Angeles, one of the most diverse places and most progressive places in the country, less than 10 out of 50 agencies are even getting this data and tracking it. So hate crime. There is a penal code section for hate crime, but it is a low-level misdemeanor. So in reality, what it is some other crime that is motivated by some type of hate against a protected characteristic. So most of our hate crimes are another crime, but along with that, part of the reason why they did it was the victim had one of these protected characteristics, or the suspect believed that the victim had one of these protected characteristics, and that was part of the reason why it was committed. Now, we have to prove that in court, and the way that we prove that is using evidence. Evidence could be direct evidence, evidence like the suspect saying some anti-Asian slur. The other could be circumstantial evidence, such as ignoring a group of one race and then attacking someone who is different. So those are the types of evidence that we have to use to prove this bias. And even if the victim does not belong to this protected characteristic, as long as the suspect thinks that, we can charge the hate crime. Am I in the way?
The last one, association with.
Yeah.
Could you clarify that?
All right, so association with was one of the ways to protect people who didn't have the protected characteristic themselves. If someone attacks this building here because it hosts Asians, and there is an employee here, I'm Puerto Rican, I work here, and I'm leaving and I'm attacked because of I work here and I support these policies, I would be eligible to be a victim of a hate crime because of my association with the institution or the person. If you have an interracial couple dating and both of them are attacked, both of them qualify to be victims of a hate crime, even though one of the interracial couple does not belong to that protected characteristic. So that's what the association with means. No, then I haven't explained it better. Yeah, so it started off for those employees of the LGBTQ center, of the abortion clinics, of the Jewish schools, to protect them even though they may not practice the faith. All right, so the law says that it can be real or perceived. So we had an anti-Asian assault with a deadly weapon in Northeast 2 years ago, where a Latina lady was attacked, and while she was attacked, the suspect was yelling anti-Asian slurs at her. So even though she was Latina, the suspect's perception was she belonged to the AAPI community, so we were able to get hate crime charges even though she didn't belong to the group that he thought. So it doesn't have to be that they belong to the group. If someone attacks someone because they believe they're gay and they may be heterosexual, that still qualifies as a hate crime. All right, now this is the issue we get on our categorizing cases as hate crimes or not. So we have to prove that bias is that it's a factor. It's supposed to be a substantial factor, but it's part of it. So when we get into examples of you have a road rage incident, they're yelling at each other in cars because of driving or whatever, and then afterwards, while they're still yelling at each other, one pushes the other and makes a derogatory comment about race or gender or such. How do we prove that that comment after the fact was part of the reason that the crime happened? And the way we prove that is by evidence, the witnesses, what the suspect says, their social media, that kind of thing. But if we don't have that evidence, we as police sometimes can't classify it as a hate crime. We're still classifying it as a crime. If they spit on them, if they punch them, it's still a battery. But we can't ask for the extra charges for it being bias motivated if there's no evidence to show that. And that's, and I'll talk about a couple cases later on that just happened this year in which that is the case. But that is the proof of burden that we have as officers, as representatives of the court system or the legal system. We have to follow what is written in the law, whether we agree with it or not. And even though these are called hate crimes, you know, it doesn't have to be hate. It can be contempt, paranoia, thrill-seeking, thinking that you're better than somebody. All of these attitudes count as bias motivation or hate, even though we usually use the term hate crime as a description for everything.
I'm sorry, I know we only have an hour. Okay,
We'll have a Q&A after. So, okay, now hate incident. Legally, there's no such thing as a hate incident. If someone went out and stood on the corner and said, Republicans should all die because they are killing black and brown people, this would not be a hate incident. It's no crime, it's free speech. And and political parties are not a protected characteristic. But if someone in the same street corner said, all Asians should die because they A, B, and C, that we would take as a hate incident. So it is free speech and there is no crime. However, at LAPD, we think that it's so important that the community feels safe. We're going to document this. We're going to take it down. We're going to interview the parties. We're going to try to see if this person has a history. We're going to do everything that we can to be proactive instead of reactive, which is unfortunately mostly what we do as officers, and to try to not let it build up to there actually being a victim. But like I said, 9 agencies in LA out of the 47 are the only ones doing this. And across the country, it's even worse than that. But that's because there's no such thing. We know what it is because we're in the business. But there is no such thing as a hate incident. And to give you an example of why we do it, if you remember, during the OJ trial, there were a bunch of responses of police out to the house for domestic violence that didn't rise to the level of a crime. So none of those were documented. So we started, LAPD, once again leading the nation, started doing something called a domestic violence incident report, just to document when there was an argument, when there was an incident that didn't rise to the level. Now it's state law that every agency complete those. But we started it before because it was a good idea to track someone's habits, behaviors, their past. So hopefully this catches on with the other agencies so that we can be more effective in our deploying of resources. And once again, they don't violate criminal law, they don't violate civil law, but we choose to report them and investigate them the same way that we do with hate crimes, because that's how important the command staff and us feel about protecting our community, because it's not only about if a crime has happened or not, it's about making the community feel safe. Feel safer. Here's an example. So, a man walks into a private school where English is taught to immigrants and spray paints illegal lovers on the lobby walls. So, the crime is vandalism. But because of this statement on the graffiti talking about illegal, referring to illegal immigration, that would make it anti-race, anti-nationality, so this would make it a hate crime. So it would be a vandalism hate crime. And even though the victim in this case is a business, because it's not the person who works there, it's the building itself. So the building is associated with the classes that are taught there. Association with, it still counts as a hate crime. Am I doing okay on time? All right, another example. A man from a mental health clinic was robbed and beaten. Suspect told the victim, crazy people like you are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a robbery, and with the statements from the suspect about crazy people, mental and physical disabilities are protected characteristics. So this would be a robbery hate crime. Okay, so now we get into hate crimes versus hate incidents. Okay, officers receive a radio call to meet a landlord who was complaining about the house next door displaying a Nazi flag in their window. Is this something that you want next to your house? No. Is there anything illegal about it? Unfortunately, no. So this would be an example of a hate incident. We would go out there, we would take a report, we would document, we would let the neighbor know about the concerns. Maybe they don't know the history of the flag, and we would do our best to try to alleviate the problem. We would take a report and document it, but this is a non-criminal act. Okay. Another one, Confederate flag laid on the lawn of a family home. Is this a crime? No, no vandalism, no damage, but we would take a hate incident report on it. So these are just some examples of the types of things that we deal with. These are cases from Los Angeles that we have dealt with, and this is not illegal. However, we document it, and should multiple of these happen and the suspect progress to a crime, we'll be able to use this stuff against them. So the reason I bring these up, the reason I bring these up is this is why it's so important and why we want to partner with you to encourage people to report. Because even though those last two are not crimes, if we have them documented, maybe we can intervene. If we can't intervene, but the suspect commits a crime against your community, another community, we can use these prior reports against them as evidence. Do you remember, well, not remember, there are some cases such as the Bill Cosby trial where you had a bunch of women testify on what had happened with him, but he wasn't charged with crimes against those women. It's the same thing with this. We can use hate incidents to show pattern and conduct of the suspects' actions in the past to prove this case. So that's why it's so important to, one of the things about the AAPI community that I found is you guys take a lot. You guys take a lot and you internalize it, and you don't want to bother the police. And by bothering us, by reporting this stuff, even if it just gets documented, you may be helping the next victim down the road. So that's one of the reasons why we want to encourage the reporting. So we talked about stats a little bit. This year we're down from last year. However, it's probably because of underreporting, not because, I mean, LA is not a very hateful place compared to other locations. But statistically, 4.5 million residents, it's been 8 months. Statistically, this is improbable. Only 17 hate crimes against the AAPI community. More than likely, it's folks not reporting it to us. And the more data that we have, our chief, the captains can deploy the resources more effectively to keep the community safe. I think that I'm over on time. Yeah, so did we have any questions? As for the police training and stuff, you know, we're working not as best we can, but we're way better than we have been on getting our almost 10,000 officers trained. I do all of the hate crimes training for the city, oversee the academy stuff, do the supervisor school stuff myself, trying to get into FTO school, and you know, it's a slow process, but we are moving forward on it. We are in no way perfect, but each year I believe that we improve. One of the other things that I wanted to bring up was and this is why we partner with organizations. So when the community reaches out to you that they didn't have a good experience or they don't think the outcome was right, you have our numbers. You contact us, challenge us so that we can make it right, or we can explain what's going on because maybe we didn't do as well of a job with the victim as we should have. One of the things that the department is doing much better is our victim-centered approach, which deals with, instead of the Jack Webb, just the facts ma'am, and move on to the next call, it's taking that time with the victim and trying to get them connected with the resources that they need that a lot of times the police aren't equipped for. We don't do therapy, but we have our victim compensation program that does. We can help with housing, with funeral costs, all that kind of stuff, but through different agencies, partner agencies such as yourself. One of the things that we have is our public website, lapdonline.org, and we have a whole hate crime section. Now, we have our PSA, our public service announcements in different languages, including Korean. We have our hate crime brochure in different languages. I'm still waiting for the Korean copy to be vetted. However, the good thing about our website that we have is everything is like our hate crime circular. Sorry, that was hooked up to the phone. So at the very top, it has language. You can click that, and it translates into 120 different languages. So whatever text is on the screen, and not only do we have pictures and PDFs and stuff, it's also written in text. It'll translate into those 120 different languages for those who have another language that they prefer to see the documents in, see the information in. And we also, like you guys got the grant, we were approved for an $833,000 grant that we're just waiting for the city council to approve, and it's specifically focused on the AAPI community and lowering anti-AAPI hate crimes. So as soon as that's approved, we'll be able to have more meetings, more get-togethers, more information, target those communities that are most affected, and those portions of the community, like the elderly, that are most vulnerable. Any other questions? Insurance-based instances. So if you need to report your lost phone, your car crash, your house has been broken into, those are the types of online reporting that we do. Everything else we go to the station. Now, the reason why we don't allow hate crimes is because we place that much importance on it. Most lay people do not know the elements of normal crimes, especially the elements of a bias-motivated crime. So that's why we send officers out to every instance of a hate incident and a hate crime. So even if there's no criminal act, if there's bias, motivation, or hate involved, we send out officers. And that's because the department feels it's so important, not only for this victim, but for their family, their friends, the community. That's why we dispatch officers to it. So the online thing is very limited in scope for those that need. I wish I could bring it up. It's CORS. It's Community Online Reporting System. You can see at lapdonline.org. Just go to the CORS and you'll see the 9 types of reports that are allowed. I've brought it up before the command staff, and my recommendation, and we're all in agreement, is this is too important to us to mess it up. So that's why we send out officers to it. Most folks don't know the legal complexities that we need to prove to get these bad guys off the street, these bad folks off the street. And the officers with the training that we go through have, we have instruction manuals on what to ask, how to say it, so that we can hopefully prevent these things in the future. Well, I'll tell you, we at LAPD, we share our data. Our data is available on our public website, and it's also given to the County Human Relations Commission, which is part of their yearly report. Now, as for 501c3s or 211, at this point, they do not share their data with us. So we go with our internal numbers on that kind of thing. Now, part of the reason we don't count those numbers is it may double count and none of the information has been vetted. Most folks don't know what the elements of crime are, so how can I take self-reported things as include that in crime stats when there's no way to know if the situation qualifies for that offense. So we give our data to everybody. Most private organizations, Advancing Justice included, cite some type of confidentiality on why they don't want to give it to us, and we don't push them on that. Because it's better for people to feel comfortable giving the information somewhere than not trust that their wishes are going to be honored. Same thing with 211 and 301. They do not share their information with us. We share our information with them. We're working with them to see if we can change it. 211 has said no, 311 we're still in the process. But as a government agency, all of our information is public. Now, as for disaggregation, we have to go by the federal standards. So the federal race codes so that our computer programs match theirs are, I think there's 13 of them. A for Asian, W for white, H for Hispanic, which includes Spain, South America, the Caribbean, Mexico. We have to match those. So fortunately, California has changed its rules and it has given us more identifiers. But when it comes to hate crimes, we have to go by what the suspect perceives. So it doesn't matter if the victim's Hispanic. If it's anti-Asian, what the suspect thinks, we go with anti-Asian. If the suspect attacks a Korean but says anti-Chinese things, then that would count as an anti-Chinese thing. So it's very difficult on the disaggregation if the slur, which they usually are broad-based. The overwhelming thing was because of Special Order 40 and the immigration stuff, it was too invasive. Most people pulled back when those types of questions, where are you from, what is your nationality, when those types of questions are asked, thinking we're going to share it with ICE, we're going to use it for some nefarious purpose. Rightly or wrongly, that's the impression that they get. And when I was writing that response, Danny and I talked about that and reached out to find out what is the best from community groups. What is the prevailing attitude on this? And it was overwhelmingly, it was going to be negative. So if you look at the motion real quick, if you look at the motion, you'll see our department response on it, what the rationale was, and then my card is over here. You can give me a call back and talk about this offline. I'm going super long. Yes, sir. So yeah, even before our funding with the chief here, we've had multiple meetings throughout the year, and what I've tended to see is a small group of concerned citizen attending this over and over and over again. So we need help spreading the message. Once we get our funding from the city council, I'd like to partner with your organizations to, you bring them, I'll talk. In the API community, the most vulnerable, the most targeted are elderly female Asians. And in my experience, that's not the target audience for TikTok, Twitter, internet sites. Those are the ones that you need to meet in person and explain the things. But I can't make folks show up to my events. And I've had some with 100, and I've had some with 5. So that's what I need your help on, is to get people to get there, or ingenious ideas to spread the word. Because, it is not a big deal for us to host something in a native language at a location. We just need a venue and an audience. We have Korean speakers, we have different language speakers that, and we have services for translators, that kind of stuff. We just need the bodies in the seats, because, the ones that are interested already know this, or you don't have to encourage them to attend. The younger generation can find everything on their phone, but those aren't the ones that are being hurt or attacked the most. Yeah, if you go to our website, lapdonline.org, in the hate crime section, or whether it be domestic violence or sexual assault or anything, all of our materials are on there. And it can be printed out, it can be distributed printed out by your organizations, held there, or hyperlinked and attached to your own websites. It's all public knowledge, it's not secret. We want it out there for the community. Our website is just an easy way for them to, you search for the police and you find it, but add it onto your own website, hyperlinks to it. We just want the information out there. And like on our website, we also have information for discriminatory housing and things like that, things that aren't crimes, because it's all part of the same. So part of the same umbrella. If you're being refused work or a place to live, it may not be a penal code violation, but it's under the same discrimination. So we have links to those types of things.
All right, thank you, Detective Martinez, and thank you all for participating in the Q&A session. Let me conclude the seminar. After this announcement, we will take a group photo. Again, thank you for your attendance and have a great day. Bye.